Mark, hi.
Good evening.
Very excited about The Madness of George III at Nottingham Playhouse this autumn.
Yes, I am too.
Good.
Very excited.
Good.
Yeah.
NT Live audiences will probably know you from your performance in Coriolanus at the Donmar Warehouse with Tom Hiddleston, which was a big hit for NT Live. How is it performing on stage that evening, knowing you're being broadcast live around the world?
Well, I suppose I've only done that once. I don't know if you can sort of roll out what the general experience is. I'm sure it's different for all actors, but I really enjoyed it. I found it a curious combination of sort of first night nerves and thrill. Partly, weirdly, with the Donmar being a small space, they took seats out for the cameras, so it didn't feel like it was, you know, epic. But I remember getting a text from David Tennant, actually, in Canada, literally just before, saying, I'm settling down in a cinema in Vancouver Island watching. I thought, that's amazing. It was an amazing thought. And I love the idea of it, you know, beaming out from there or from Nottingham or wherever. And I think it's a very special experience.
When we broadcast The Madness of George III live into cinemas, do you...
What?
Yes, we're doing it. We're doing it. It's going 64 countries around the world. Do you think you'll adjust your performance knowing that you're being screened in widescreen?
No, I think that way madness lies, as they say. I think you have to just do it. I mean, I remember being in Coriolanus. Of course, you're aware of things. I remember we changed a little bit of the blocking, literally to slow some things down so the cameras could kind of dolly past you and stuff like that. But I think you just sort of go with that, really. Otherwise, I think you can't suddenly say, all right, this is for a film. So everything becomes really tiny. Or I think you just have to try and make it as close to the live experience as possible, really.
Well, I directed a small family business at the National Theatre, which was NT Live, Alan Ayckbourn show.
I saw it. Don't think I didn't.
And it was brilliant.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, yes.
Awkward pause. Experience. It was a brilliant show. Brilliant show. Yeah.
And what I found fascinating was that you do a camera rehearsal, and then the next day you go to a cinema and you watch the run through on screen, and you usually have to make slight adjustments, particularly to props or wigs or makeup. Because on stage, they look absolutely brilliant. But as soon as they're on screen, suddenly you start to realise they need just a bit more definition.
That's interesting though, isn't it? Because it's not like you're trying to fool people into thinking this is the movie of any play. And yet, I suppose people have different expectations when they're sitting there. I remember someone telling me that when they saw Coriolanus, everyone got up and applauded at the end. And I thought, this is so weird, isn't it? And of course, you get no benefit from that, because you didn't get the ovation. It's just remote.
Well, and with George III, because obviously it's a comedy, neither do you get the laughter. It's meant to be funny. You don't get the laughter from the audience in the cinemas either.
No. But you mean, hopefully whatever audience is not removed from the cameras will hopefully join in the spirit of the things. I think there is a sort of blitz mentality as well about the evening. If there's something special, it's a bit like when audiences they like it when they see something go wrong because they feel something's happening which is different. And I've been to a few NT Lives in the audience when they do a little preamble, a little speech, and there is a sort of nice festive air to them. You know, I think they're generally kind to everyone's terror.
Do you think you'll have any family or friends watching the NT Live in a cinema?
Oh yeah, I hadn't thought of that. I guess so. I mean, everyone's going to come at some point, I think, within the run, but I'd certainly encourage it to. My partner's mum has been to several of them, actually. She just likes going. And I was filming a couple of years ago in Wolf Hall, deep in Somerset, and we were in this tiny village, and they had a lovely old cinema, and even, you know, down to homemade posters. You know where you can still see the pencil line with the poster paint over it? And it was for Simon Russell Beale's King Lear. And I thought, this is brilliant, isn't it? You just think, you thought you might just be able to go and see Bad Boys 2 tonight, but actually no, you can see this. I think it's a great innovation.
I think my parents will go and watch it at the Broadway cinema, which is in Nottingham. I've told them they have to come and watch it live in the theatre first.
Yes.
And then they're allowed to go and watch the broadcast
No, I'm not
version.
bothered, Adam. We're just going to go to the pictures.
Why did you accept the role of George III in The Madness of George III at Nottingham Playhouse?
Blackmail. Well, you asked me, and I was very thrilled at the idea of it. No one else has asked me ever. It's a brilliant play. I did George III and his ministers for A-level, and a bit like Alan and his introduction to the play, it's because it's a notoriously dull period. But I remember being so thrilled about the illness. I mean, in those long, summary history lesson afternoons, it was like, oh, he goes mad. Marvellous. But then, and I remember lots of the ins and outs of Fox and Pitt and those rival ministries and all that. But it's the human story, isn't it? I think that appeals, and I think it's a very, if you can say such a thing, it's a natural subject for Alan to have lighted on. I think because of his great interest in history, but also in the frailties of human beings, you know, and also his attraction to royalty. You know, I think it's got a lot of his touchstones in it, hasn't it? And I think the sort of face behind the royal mask is something he's always been very interested in, as have I think. And I played Charles I and I've played George IV. I'm working my way around all the kings and some of the queens possibly, but principally it's because I think it is a modern classic. I think it's a terrific play. I'm a huge fan of Alan, and I wanted to work with you again. So it's the complete package.
And did you know Nottingham Playhouse? Have you ever seen anything
by
there?
repute,
right?
And from John Neville, who was a great hero of mine, and Richard Eyre, and you know, I think like so many things. When I was a child, the RSC used to tour to Newcastle. That's where I saw most things. I saw Coriolanus there, and all kinds of amazing things, because it was this sort of triangle of what they did. It was Stratford, London and Newcastle, and it meant a huge amount, I think, to bring shows like that to the regions. And in the same sort of way, I was always aware that Nottingham was one of those beacons, I suppose. But I know I've never seen anything there before, and I won't at the moment because I'll be in it. And I tell you what, I'm going to go and see it in the pictures. Oh no, I can't.
I'm quite conscious that there is a sort of British interest in the royal family. The success of The Crown last year, for example, huge interest in Harry and Meghan's wedding this summer. And I think that's one of the reasons tickets are flying out the door at the moment. What is it? Why do you think we have such an interest in the royal family, and why do we want to see them represented on stage or screen? Where's that come from?
Well, I can speak for myself, and as a confirmed Republican, I just find the theatre of it interesting. And there's a reason why we are always drawn to these stories, particularly about warring factions. And what I find very interesting is that the struggle for the crown has actually passed into politics, but it is essentially exactly the same story. And that's why we're drawn to political dramas. That means that the royal family have assumed a different role now, I think, which is kind of soap opera. And so we're drawn to the old soap operas and also to the ongoing one. And the reason the Americans love the royal family so much is because they miss having one. And the reason they anoint families like the Kennedys as their own, there's a sort of need for them, I think, within the public, both to build them up and knock them down, inevitably. So any royal story which has all those things going for it is immediately attractive. But I think it's also, there is a sort of very British thing and a very Bennett-esque thing of the sort of happy sadness of it, the bittersweetness of it, which I'm always very drawn to. But the public face of the monarch, the lovely happy marriage of George and Charlotte, and then the rivalries of the different political camps and the hatred of the son, and just as George I hated his son, and there are these fascinating threads to pull out, I think. Particularly, actually, I think with the Prince of Wales waiting all his life, that is not uncommon. Edward VII had it with Victoria, and Charles has it with Elizabeth, and you can see the same things resonating through history, which I think is very interesting.
So there are physical and mental and emotional demands in playing this role, I think. You have to show someone who really goes on a massive journey and arc. How do you feel about that? What's the challenge? What approach might you take to that in rehearsals or preparation?
I don't know. I run a bit, so I think you have to be fit. I'm trying to keep fit for it, as it were. But I'm very excited by the journey of it. We start with him very much in control. of his family, and he's a very, one thing to love about him, and everyone I think does these days, is his sort of pragmatism. Farmer George, they called him, and I love all that. Despite his sort of insistence on court etiquette, he was really a man of the people, and knew what he was doing. I think he had a sort of eye on the future, and this is how we must be. So the destruction of that, disintegration of that, I find very exciting and also very moving. You know, the people around him are going, "Oh, don't be ill. You're not ill, are you?" And because of what it let in is essentially the opposition, as it were, and his hated son, but also what it means for the country. You know, it's a different world. He's not a constitutional monarch exactly. There's a lot more riding on that. So it's the health of the nation, isn't it? And I suppose that sort of also rings true to this day, as with a president or a head of state of any kind. It's sort of, that's the country as we perceive it. And if the king is mad, the country is sick. That really excites me. And all the stuff Alan has written about the sort of symptoms of it and the repetition, and I find all that very interesting. And you know, we still don't actually know exactly what it was. Some of it is very familiar from my own upbringing and also from other things. And, you know, there's an interesting thing, that film The Aviator, about Howard Hughes had a kind of mania. There's a bit, isn't there, when he says, "Show me the blueprint, show me the blueprint, show me the blueprint, show me." He can't stop, and he actually has to physically stop his own mouth, running on patterns like that, running on rails. It seems to be like a symptom of this kind of mania.
It's interesting you mentioned State of the Nation. Somebody described this play as the Brexit play recently in an article.
Who would have thunk it? And I saw that. It was in the New York Times.
In the New York Times, yeah. And what they said was, we're having, as a nation, we're having a nervous breakdown. And this play, through the character of the king, sort of represents that.
Brilliant timing, Adam. How did you know?
Well, I just saw it coming. Unlike the politician.
Like everybody else, yes.
Did you see the movie version? And is there a pressure in playing a role that Nigel Hawthorne, who originated the role, played it for 2 years on stage, then on screen? Is there a pressure playing a role that's sort of associated with a particular actor?
I did see the film, which I think is terrific. Yes and no. I mean, what can you say? You can say that about, unless you're actually in a new play and you get to have your name in the front of the book for the first time, which is always a nice moment. You just got to think, well, a lot of people have done this. I suppose that's the Hamlet question, isn't it? But then, you know, there's about 78 of those a year now, so it's easy. That's easy. Actually, Hamlet's easy now. Yes, of course. He was brilliant. David Haig did it not so long ago. He was wonderful. So, but you just have to sort of think, well, I'm going to have my shot at it, and I enjoy it, I think. But I think the legacy of that is very important, especially with Nigel Hawthorne, who was a brilliant actor. Originating it and being so right for it. I mean, I remember actually he did King Lear not long before he died, and there was a general sense that he'd done Lear by doing this play, you know, and I was very struck by that actually. But anyway, it is and it isn't.
Why should somebody come and see our production of The Madness of George III?
Why should someone come and see our production? Well, because I think it's a fantastic play. I really do think it is a modern classic. It's sort of found its time in an interesting way. It's a bit of an epic, which is always nice. I think it's an under-examined period of our history, a very underrated king, a fascinating political climate, which again you can draw all sorts of fascinating parallels to our own sort of environment. And I think it's very funny and a brilliant night out.
The buzz in the city since we announced this production over a year ago, coming up to, is immense. Wow. So we're so excited to start rehearsals in October. It's going to be an absolutely fantastic production. I know that already. There you go, you see.
Well, it's been announced so long, I keep forgetting I haven't done it. Which is quite reassuring. I thought it was very good. I thought it was
wonderful.
Well. Yes.
Good, thank you. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, thank you.